Hi, folks. It's me again, Dustin Michelli here at Press Monkey Independent Media, with another Primate Report. To start, I would like to say that we here at Press Monkey Independent Media, I here at Press Monkey Independent Media, I strive for accuracy, and responsible reporting. Though I will from time to time slip. Even my very first video. Our Press Monkey Independent Media 2.1 episode that was covering Donald Trump and the G20 meeting. I made a very huge mistake, and my mistake was that I mistakenly said that it was Melania Trump, not Ivanka Trump, that was there and sat at the G20 meeting. That was incorrect. It was, in fact, I misspoke. I incorrectly misspoke. It was not an intentional misreporting. It was a misspeaking, and confusing of the two lovely young Trump ladies. I apologize to everyone. Hopefully I'll get better at this, and I'm trying to be responsible by coming out in full disclosure and saying that I made this mistake. I like to correct this mistake. So it was not, in fact, Melania Trump at the meeting. It was Ivanka Trump, his daughter, which was an even stranger thing. This gives me an opportunity, though, to give a little bit more broader of a report on the G20 thing, which I'd like to do. I don't know if very many of you are very familiar with The Intercept. It's a organization and media outlet that I'm very fond of. I trust very much. And there's a report by a great reporter named Robert Mackey that was done. And I'd like to read some of that to you so I can give you a much broader understanding of what was going on than I actually did during the initial report. And I'm going to start doing a lot more of this sort of thing rather than just kind of shooting from the hip. I'm going to report on other reports and give you a little bit more understanding of what's happening. So a little bit more in depth here on this one. Robert Mackey reports, when President Donald Trump decided on Saturday to skip part of the discussion about what the world leaders in the G20, the largest economies, would do to help Africans improve their lives at home, rather than risk them by migrating to Europe, there was no shortage of cabinet members who would have taken his seat between China's President Xi Jinping and the United Kingdom's Prime Minister Theresa May. The American delegation to the Group of 20 conference in Hamburg, Germany, included Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who is fourth in line of the presidency, as well as Secretary of State Stephen Mnuchin, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, and National Secretary Advisor H.R. McMaster. That Trump chose instead to see his daughter Ivanka alongside the 19 heads of state was perhaps the most stunning illustration to date that sees a complex lack of experience in affairs of state as no barrier at all to treating her as the de facto vice president. And I concur with that assessment from the Intercept. That is a very apt and very fair assessment, much more fair than a lot of the mainstream medias are actually giving it. I'd like to continue reading a little bit more of their assessment of it. Again, this is from the Intercept and Robert Mackey. I would have to give him full credit for this. The first daughter's presence at the main table was confirmed in a photograph shared on Twitter. I think most of us have seen that photograph, and later deleted from the social media network by Svetlana Lukash, Russian President Vladimir Putin's representative to the G20. I'm not really sure why that's important or how that worked out. If she just was, maybe she was in the picture and didn't want to be in the picture, and she has the right to delete that. That could very well be. The image shows that the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan were seated close by during the first daughter's cameo. A White House official tried to play down the incident, telling agents France press that Ivanka had just briefly joined the main table when the president had to step out. However, an official who was in the room told Bloomberg News that she had taken Trump's place at the last two separate occasions. Merkel, who somehow managed to elect Germany's leader despite not being an heiress, played down the incident when asked about it later. Of course she would. That makes a lot of sense. American observers, however, were less willing to overlook the implications of the blatant nepotism, which is true. And if you don't know what nepotism is, you should look it up loosely. It's basically when you hire your family into high-ranking positions that they would not normally be able to get if you were not in that position. And anything could be nepotism. You'd be hiring your daughter to work in your convenience store or your health food store or what have you, or your son. It can count as a lot of things, and it's not an all bad thing, but it is bad when you're talking about doing it in government and high-ranking positions and even in important business positions. To continue, some of the Trump family members. Family's defenders mistakenly suggested that the image had been taken at another G20 event held the same day, which Ivanka Trump had attended by invitation, the launch of the New World Fund to support women entrepreneurs, where she sat between Jim Yong Kim, the World Bank president, and Christine Lagarde, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund. These people rub elbows with a lot of powerful people, no matter if they're elected or not. And President Trump and Chancellor Merkel attended that event, as seen in the video shared by Reprt, a news agency owned by the Russian government. When the president later addressed the gathering, he read from prepared remarks. I'm very proud of my daughter Ivanka. He then looked up and suggested in an ad-lib that his pride apparently has less to do with any of her accomplishments than her mere existence, and continues with, always have been, from day one. I have to tell you that from day one, she has always been great, a champion. She's a champion. This man who inherited his fortune, then added, with no apparent sense of irony, if she weren't my daughter, it'd be so much easier for her. And that just, it really shows, again, it illustrates, highlights in every single way the complete disconnect of Donald Trump and people like him. You know, if you think that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are too different from each other, just remember that she sat in on meetings about health care when she was merely the first lady, and so it wasn't very different from what's going on here. If you're a Clinton fan, or either Bill or Hillary, you're going to be sorry to be hearing that aspect of this. Continue on, just to make this a little bit broader. I'm not going to make it much longer. There's also a report in The Guardian by David Smith in Washington, and he has a kind of a preamble about wanting to stay out of politics, or how Ivanka said that she wants to stay out of politics, and there's a quote here. Where she was seated with everybody and stuff like that. It's not too different from the initial assessment, really. Though there was one aspect of it I would like to cover. It's not too different from the initial assessment from like Intercept and what have you, but it also continues on to a little bit more aspect. Is Zerlina Maxwell, a former director of the progressive media for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, told MSNBC, it's completely inappropriate, quote, It's completely inappropriate. What qualifications and experience does Ivanka Trump have in her background that should put her at the table with the world leaders like Theresa May and Vladimir Putin? And I have to concur with that. It's just absurd that she's even there. I'm not really sure what these people are thinking. It shows their disconnectedness both with what they call in the media optics, which were really important. People used to understand that term. The optics of this don't look good, and literally the functionality of it is completely unusable. You can't have somebody that was not only not elected, but completely and utterly unqualified in every single way sit in on these kinds of very serious discussions and continue any kind of credibility in the eyes of the world leaders. And no matter how awful those G20 world leaders might be, many of them are some of the most monstrous people on the planet, if you ask me, in terms of what they do for workers' rights and what they do to the environment and things like that. But be that as it may, this is still an institution that is where it's the bargaining table. It's the big bargaining table, and whether you agree with it or not, it deserves some kind of decorum. Um, so all I wanted to, the last thing I'll add is that they added in this particular um, this particular Guardian article, they added Mrs. Trump has been a prominent at the G20. On Thursday night, she and her husband, Jared Kushner, another White House advisor, joined her father at a bilateral meeting with Angela Merkel. Early on Saturday, she took part in a World Bank event fund, and that was just repeating that whole thing about the. So again, nothing really too extraordinary about this report. I made a mistake. I wanted to go back and make the appropriate correction immediately. As a good journalist should, even though I'm a shoestring journalist and just a beginner, I'm trying to have some kind of integrity here, folks, and hold me to it. Hold me to the integrity. So again, there's my report on my actual G20 report, and I know I'm just reading to you other reports from other sources that are the breakdown of it, but that's the breakdown of it and my correction for the evening. Again, this is thank you for grabbing a limb with me. And this is Dustin Michelli at Press Monkey Independent Media, and this has been another edition of the Primate Report. Thank you.